Welcome to Flip Lesson 95, 5th grade. Today we're looking at reciprocals. Welcome to the sun. Reciprocals are really not the hardest concept in the world. However, for whatever reason, a lot of people like to get them all confused. So let's take a look and understand what it is that you need to know when it comes to understanding reciprocals. The question is, how many 1/2 are in 1? And so as you look at the picture there, you say, okay, well, how many 1/2 do you see? And it'd be very easy to say, okay, I see 1 1/2, I see 2 1/2. So there are 2 1/2 in 1. Another way you could think about this is, what is 1 divided by 1/2, right? Which and then is going to be 2. How many 1/2 are in 1? 1 divided by 1/2, which equals 2. What we see here is we start to see a relationship. There is a relationship between these two numbers, and that relationship is known as the reciprocal. And we know the reciprocals because if I were to take 1/2 and multiply it by its reciprocal, which in this case is the number 2, which I can write as a fraction like this, I should get an answer of 1. So let's try it. 1 times 2 equals 2. 2 times 1 equals 2. And that's 2 over 2, which of course is equal to 1. And so you can see what has happened there. Another really simple thing that you see here is a reciprocal. As you look at 1/2 compared to 2 over 1, it's really just taking the fraction and flipping it. And that's a way to think about it, but let's understand it also. Let's try this again. It says, how many 2/3 are in 1? In other words, what is 1 divided by 2/3? So you have this idea here. We have a 2/3 here, all right? And our 2/3 is made up of 2 1/3. Now, we want to understand how many are in 1. And so if I add this last third in here, we have a complete idea, right? The green circle now represents 1. Now the question is, how many 2/3 are in there? All right, well, we can outline this one. That's 1 2/3. But this lower portion, that's not a 2/3, right? That's only half of a 2/3, because 1/3 is half a 2/3. So really, we have 1 2/3 and half of another 2/3. In other words, we have 1 1/2 2/3 in there. Now, wait a minute. Reciprocals, you said flipping them. That doesn't look like it's flipped. Well, let's take a look at this improper fraction. 1 times 2, if we were to change this mixed number back into an improper fraction, 1 times 2 is 2, and then we add it to the numerator. Right, so 1 times 2 plus 1 is going to give us a 3, and put it back over to the denominator, and we have 3 over 2. And you can check your work, because 2 goes into 3 one time. 3 minus 2 gives us a 1. And so you see that idea. So 1 1/2 is really 3 over 2, which now that we see 3 over 2, if you were to look at this problem, 1 divided by 2/3, and we were to leave it as a reciprocal, reciprocals can be improper fractions. We want them to be improper fractions if that's the case. And we have this idea, and now we can double check our work by saying, okay, if I have 2/3 and I multiply by 3/2, I should get an answer of 1. So look at this idea. 2 times 3 equals 6. 3 times 2 equals 6 equals 1. And so in the end, we see that, yes, that works. Right? So, what is the reciprocal of 3/4? Okay, so we need 3/4 times something, which is going to give us an answer of 1. All right? And here's where that idea of flipping things around comes. Because in the end, we're going to need our numerator and denominator to be the same. So how are we going to do that? Well, if I take 4 times 3, that will give me 12. And then if I do the opposite, I do 3 times 4, right? You see how it got flipped, our fraction really got flipped there. And we got to take a quick pause. Okay, so we got cut off in the middle of this problem here. So let's just take a step back and see what we're doing here. So we have 3/4. We want to turn it into so that it's equal to 1. So what is the reciprocal? That's what we're searching for here, is a reciprocal. So 3 times, we said, okay, if I take, 3 times 4, right, and then 4 times 3, I should get the same product, right? 3 times 4, and that equals 1, and so we're right. Just like that. We figured it out. And so in the end, what we've really done is we've taken this idea and we've really just flipped it around, and that's where we get our reciprocal from. And so we have that idea. All right, how about this one? It says, what is the reciprocal of 5? Wait a minute, 5 isn't a fraction. How are we going to find the reciprocal? Well, we just turn our 5 into our fraction. We can take any whole number and turn it into a fraction by placing it over 1. Once we place it over 1, now we can solve for 1. We want something that's going to have a common denominator in the end. And the easiest way to do that is just say, let's flip it. All right, so I flip the fraction over. This becomes the reciprocal. So 5 times 1 equals 5, and 1 times 5 equals 5. Which, once again, yes, got it right. All right, so we have this idea. All right, reciprocals. They're not as scary or as hard as the name makes them sound. Making more sense, hopefully. So then finally we can really get to this idea, 1 divided by 2/5. You might say, well, I don't really know how to divide fractions yet, Mr. And it's like, well, yeah, you don't. But you do know this idea. If I were to say, what is 1 divided by 2, that's not what I want to use. Yeah, 1 divided by 2, you would very easily say, well, that's 1/2. 1 divided by 2. All right, very simply, 1 divided by 2. That's easy. Well, why can't we do the same idea here? Right? 1 divided by 2/5. If I say 1 divided by 2/5, it's going to equal something. Or I can just rewrite this and say, okay, if I'm going to take 2/5 and I'm going to multiply by something, I'm going to equal 1. Because these are our bigger numbers. Not necessarily bigger numbers. Those are our product and our dividend are the same. Right? So it's going to be, right? Flip it quick. We can see that 5 over 2 is going to give us 10 over 10, which is going to be equal to 1. So we have this idea with reciprocals. All right, here's some samples to get you on your way as you work with reciprocals, understanding exactly how this all works. All right, don't forget that if you get an improper fraction, we're not going to simplify them to mixed numbers, not in the case of reciprocals. That's lesson 95.